All right, guys, we've had our youth intake and we kind of know the good and the bad of it, right? If you don't remember, it's been a little while. We had a couple of players that we thought were okay and maybe they'll do something. We had some players that we're not going to offer contracts to. We did offer a contract to this guy, but he'll never play on the first team. He's just going to be a loner and then we'll try to sell him. That's just the way that it is, right? So that's kind of what's happened with our youth intake. Yeah, you win some, you lose some. What we really want to do now, though, is we want to go raid. We want to go jump over to other teams, and we want to take away from their youth intake. Now, there's a couple of things that we can do. I'll show you kind of the long way first, and then we'll do it the not so long way. Go over to World up here. I'll show this to you again. Go to your globe, go up to World, and then go to Transfers. When you're here in Transfers, what you want to look at is not all transfers. You want to look into youth intake. Right? And then you want to scroll all the way down, and here you have youth intake for everybody. Now, you can do it the hard way. You can go through here. You can select a bunch of these. You can add them to shortlist. I'd recommend doing that. You can add them to your trial list shortlist and then kind of sort them out that way. Now, there's a whole ton of these. So that's what we're going to do here first. I'll just show you quickly what you can do, and then I'll show you a method that I think maybe will work a little bit better for you. You go back over here to your short list. You want to look at the trial lists, and it will show you some information about them. See, we have pace and acceleration rankings for a number of these players, and then you can decide what you want to do, right? You can go and you can ask him to come in for a trial, so you can offer a trial. You could just have your scout scout him directly, so you get a scouting report. I might actually have a scouting report for Jacob Moore instead of having him come in on trial. And the reason why is because I'm looking at this pace and acceleration and guessing about where it might be. But the reality is that the majority of these players, I'm not even going to look at. Any player who's red, I mean, there's no chance. I'm not going to look at that at all because he'll never be fast enough to play for the sort of team that I want to play. These players over here we don't know anything about. Maybe we'll look at them, maybe we won't. I mean, they're all goalkeepers, so it doesn't matter. Pace and acceleration doesn't really matter that much for your keepers, so I'm not so sure about that. And then once you're done with it, of course, you want to remove it from the short list so that you don't end up getting a whole bunch of emails about this player. So that's one way you can do that. For a while, I was going through Football Manager and spending literally hours going through youth intake like that over and over again to find the players that we can pull on, right? It's not much fun. There is another way to do this, and that is doing the search for players within range. Now, I know that there are some people who don't think that this is appropriate. People like Kev, you know, Lelujo, it's all right. Maybe you want to do this, maybe you don't. This is the way that I do it. I tend to do a search for these players. I try to find acceleration and pace ratings here that will allow me to have what I want. And then this comes from the Zealand packet for creating new gen faces in the game. We want to make sure that we're looking at new gens. So we have is new gen is not nothing, which is wonderful. And then we perform our search, and we'll take a look and see which players we have. And then we, of course, start from the top. We're ranking this according to pace. Ideally, we just want all of the ones that are green, but we can make some exceptions. And so what we do is we go through here and we select a whole bunch of them, and we have our scouts scout them. And that is what we're going to do. We're going to select a whole bunch of these. We're going to have the scouts scout them. And when we're done having the scouts scout them, then we'll be able to find out who is good and who is not, and we'll be able to plan accordingly. Now, remember, you're not going to be able to sign a lot of these players right away. This is one of the reasons why I'm not going to bring guys in on trial. It becomes really messy really quickly. Though that is a way you can approach this problem, I wouldn't really recommend doing it that way. If you have scouts, you have money for them, I'd recommend sending the scouts out, having them look at the player, and then when they're done looking at it, making the determination based on their report as to whether you actually want to go after the guy or not. It's going to save you a lot of time. So when we look here at our recruitment, our scout priorities, so you can see there's a whole bunch of these guys that we have shortlisted, including guys who are going to be transferred in. This is going to be a fun one, our guy from Macau. Right after that, you can see a whole bunch of guys who are young. These are all the guys that we just added. And so what the scouts are going to do is they're going to run over and they're going to look at those, I don't know, 150-something players, and they'll make sort of determinations about them and give us reports and let us know whether we should sign them or not, and then we will make the appropriate decision when the time comes. So that's the way that it works in Football Manager. That's the way that you can do this scouting sort of on your own without having to go through huge lists of players like over and over again. Now, as you can guess, youth intake is not over, right? So when we look again at the world, I'm filming this, it's March 25th in game. We go back to our world screen and to the transfers and look at youth intake. You can see that we've had a whole bunch of youth intake come in on March 25th. When we go back through this, we can see that youth intake only began, it looks like it was in the beginning of March. I mean, there were some players coming on for some of these other teams, but these are mostly players that are just sort of in the background. They're not actually playing in the leagues that we have loaded, right? Just to have a bunch of players in the background. And so what I'd recommend doing is do it once when youth intake comes, and then wait until probably like mid or late April. Take a look at this screen, make sure you have a day where it looks like youth intake has stopped, and then go through again and look for players that you can have your scouts look at and send you reports on. When you find the player that you want, what you want to do with them is you want to put them on your short list. I just put them on my default short list. Even if they're not willing to sign for you, if you have these players on your default shortlist, there is a chance that they will come available in the future, and then you can yank them off without paying any sort of money at all, and then you don't have to worry about paying transfer fees for these great young players that you found. Now, one thing you'll often find with young players is that they'll be really reluctant to go play for your team, especially if they're really young. So if we look at... let's see, probably this guy, Che Ho Sung, I think. Look at his scout report. Yeah, he has no transfer interest. The reason why he has no transfer interest is not because we have a horrible team. It's not because he's going to rub it in our face or because he thinks that Pohang is better, right? It has nothing to do with that. The reason why he has no transfer interest is because he's young. He's 16 years old. He probably will not be interested in coming until he's 18. That doesn't mean that we want to forget about him. Look, I mean, he's an attacking left winger with 14 pace, 16 acceleration. He won't necessarily be a starter for us, but we could turn him into a great player, especially since he's got a professional personality. So we want a player like this. I don't care what the scouting report says. This is the sort of guy that we want to focus on and we want to build around. Because of that, what we want to do is we want to keep an eye on him and keep him on the short list and maybe take a look at this like every 6 months and see, okay, is he willing to come over now? And when he is, then we'll pay the money, we'll bring him over, and he'll be on our team and he'll be part of the system, right? Just realize he's only 5'5", which is also pretty crazy in and of itself. Anyway, there you have it. That's the way that I approach rating youth intake from other teams. It's not really that difficult to do. It takes a little bit of time, but when you get the feel for it, it can go straight into your game, your normal Football Manager game really quickly, and it's something that I think comes pretty naturally. So there you have it. Then you don't have to spend too much time bringing players in on trial, and over the long run, you'll put together a team that's unstoppable, basically. Talk to you later. Bye.